Welcome, folks. It is episode...
Yeah, that one.
That one. Episode 180, 100. If you know anything about darts, right, you watch the international tournaments, and there are international tournaments of darts. The big score is 180. Well, that's where we're at today, people. 180. And if you don't know that that was the international best score for darts, then perhaps that was a bit of a tripwire for you. And we're going to talk about tripwires, the potential tripwires, even if you have done all your work as a global leader. What are the things that maybe you need to look for that are being put in front of you that you need to go back to school and navigate through? We're going to talk about that today. Stick around. Yes, this is Two Chaps, Many Cultures, the #1 show on the internet or anywhere in the interwebs of the business of culture and the culture of business. How are you today, pal?
I am super fantastic. It's a good day. It's a Good Friday. It is Good Friday.
It is Good Friday. It just happens to be a Good Friday and Good Friday all together. So, you know, I don't know, do you say Happy Good Friday? Not really. It's Good Friday. It is a
not where I come from.
No, the start of the celebration of Easter in the Christian world, and people celebrate in different ways and shapes and forms, but it is probably one of those ubiquitous Christian celebrations that everybody follows. So let's say happy Easter to everybody for this coming weekend, unless you're Greek, of course, and that's, I think, happens like a week later. That, of course, right? So
or
that's
as my Salvadorian friend yesterday said, Feliz Semana Santa. So there we go. Every day of the Easter week is sanctified, I guess.
sanctified.
So it's Thursday Santa, it's Friday Santa, it's Saturday Santa, it's Sunday Santa. So everything is Santa in the Spanish-speaking world. Excellent. So it makes it easier for those of us who are wondering, is this happy or not, and how do we celebrate it? Well, it is the big Christian holiday of the year, and I hope those of you who don't have to work today, I hope you enjoy that time with your loved ones. I hope you stay safe. And I hope you don't have to think too much about your global career, because that's what we're going to talk about. We're going to remind you that if you're working globally, then you have a global career. You work in an international context, and you may have been on that journey without any hindrance. You may have had a wonderful experience so far. Some of you may have hit some roadblocks along the way, and we're going to talk about what constitutes a roadblock, how do you recognize it, maybe how do you circumnavigate it before you approach it. Are there ways to stay clear of this, and what can we learn from the mistakes of others?
Absolutely. Well, I think so framing it in we talk a lot about personal preparation for being a global leader, and that is cultural education, cultural awareness, self-awareness. All those kind of things are pretty common and basic in what we work with clients. But this is kind of like a maybe thinking a little bit more down the road, where you have had a career of sorts, and you're well on the journey to your self-knowledge and knowledge of cultures. You've become a pretty good practitioner on the global stage, but that doesn't mean that your situation is always consistent, and you may be confronted by the roadblocks that come up, that if you are a very what we would call a competent global, you may kind of underestimate just how much these things can kind of pop up in front of you without warning. And just like a kangaroo in the dusky roads of Australia, all of a sudden jump in front of you, and as good as a driver as you are, you're still probably going to maybe skittle it. So these are the things we probably might want to just spitball a bit today. That's all it is.
So what do you consider to be one of these kangaroos or deer or I don't know, any type of any type of wildlife that, or any type of not a life obstacle. Well, what could be something that could derail your global success, even though you might consider yourself experienced or well versed in global trade?
Well, because we try to put the idea in the brain of our clients that these skills are something that is becoming more and more marketable in the global workplace, even in the domestic workplace. You know,
Right.
culture is local, so these having these skills in your kind of in your briefcase is going to make you sought after. Now, what if you know, you do change jobs and you're brought on by a company that says, you know, we're looking for some global people because in our mind we want to grow up one day to be a global company, and you come in with all guns blazing and go, this is great, it's this is fantastic, I'm your guy, I'm your girl, I'm the one that's going to come in and really be able to deploy your global aspirations. But of course, then think about when you get there, if you've asked the right questions about how long down the journey has that company already been able to take themselves. Because
Right.
if you come into a company where, with your best knowledge and understanding and experience, into a group of people that are still wonderful people, they're wonderful business people, but they do not have the cultural competence that you have, you may as well be speaking a completely different language. So,
right, and they may not even recognize the issue. It's I think oftentimes when you are that global professional, if you are experienced, if you have some level of cultural competence, and you've been asked to apply it and use it in one role or the other, and you're brought in as the new person, adding experience and value to a new team or a team that is new to you, and they don't speak that language, you are, well, you're up for, I don't want to say a battle, but you're going to remove a roadblock. I had a case in point. I recently completed a training with a young professional. She's originally from India and worked for a European big conglomerate around the globe, most recently here in North America, and is now being sent to headquarters in Europe, where she is in charge of sustainability initiatives that tie into a bigger strategic approach for the company. And the two people that she has identified will need to work closely with her are people who have been in that company for several years, who've become the specialists in their respective research fields. However, they have little to no international experience, and they see themselves as very subject matter, and this is my turf, and this is what we're best at, and don't tell me what to do. And in comes this globally minded, tasked with a international strategy young person, probably 15, 20 years younger than the people that will now report to her, and she needs to make that relationship work. So here is the globally experienced individual with lots of cultural competency. Here are people with lots of subject matter expertise and little to no international experience, and yet they're supposed to now adopt a more strategic international global view. Now, can you imagine these two worlds already colliding, or there's friction? There will be friction going forward, and the lady that is now entering that role, she's very much aware of that. This will potentially trip up her career, right? This will be a test for her, whether she can implement what she's learned internationally into a very niche area of her company where the international aspect hasn't been looked at as much yet, right? So one of the examples I had recently.
yeah. So these tripwires are the perception that the people you're working with perhaps are thinking that this is going to be easy. You're going to supply them with a brand new Zoom account, and they're going to go off and they're going to start interacting with people on the other side of the planet. So the technology will make it ubiquitous, and this will take care of any differences or disagreements or friction that we might see culturally with the people on the other side of the world, or maybe even the people on the other side of the country that you're working with. So these again, this is a tripwire for you. You have to take responsibility for this yourself and start to inform the company, the people around you, of kind of taking a step back, which can be difficult for very proud professionals in this world that are being asked to take a step back and confront their own perhaps blindness to the potential tripwires for them. And I guess that is one way to coin it, right? That is the way to coin it is to say, I want to not save you, but well, I want to kind of lead you or stand beside you in this journey that I've already been on, because, and then using humility to say, because I've made mistakes and I don't want, and I want to maybe guide you from the reference of the mistakes I've made, which have been identified. And so there's that one thing, that the perception is that this is easy just because we're all human beings and we all operate by Maslow's rules, and we have basic needs. And of course, if all we do is meet them, that's going to be good enough. Well, obviously it's not going to be.
Yeah, I like to say the Maslow's pyramid of needs is a nice mountain to climb, and there are multiple routes that lead to the summit of that pyramid or that mountain. So just because we have the same human needs doesn't mean we go about achieving them the same way. And I think that there is this there's a trap. You said tripwire. I say also there's a trap now for a lot of the younger global professionals who grew up with online communication, with asynchronous communication, with all the technology tools available to us, that we perceive the world as getting smaller because technology gets us, or gives us, the illusion of proximity, right? It appears that Brett and I are only separated through a little line here at the center of the screen, and yet we are 2 hours or more of a flight apart from each other, right? So we were exemplifying this illusion right here on the screen. And the assumption that we have somehow bridged a gap through technology that's a trap. I think that's something that will bite you in the rear, because just because you can now talk to people on the other side of the globe in a way that's almost high definition and with very little lag, or with all the other bells and whistles that come with this technology, doesn't mean you truly have built rapport and connection around the globe. So that's a part of the exercise that is still your obligation. That's still, or mine. It's still an obligation that I need to fulfill. No technology in the world will take that off my hands.
Yeah. And you've got to take into account the willingness of the people in the other country or other region to be open to your approaches, because you've been put in the place of having to now be the global interlocutor between your company and the foreign entities, whether they be clients, whether they be a new M&A partner, so on and so forth. What is the openness that exists there? That's kind of one of the first jobs. So your tripwire is literally the people you're trying to work with,
Right.
and they're either their knowledge or their just sheer ability and openness to have you come and work with them. You've already kind of armed yourself with the ability to know that there are going to be potential differences. You might need to build credibility a different way. You might need to communicate in a different way. You might need to do a lot of style switching. This, but then having these very intentional conversations with the company, understanding its culture, understanding the culture of the people that you're working with, not through a country culture lens, but just their awareness and their willingness to open their hearts and minds and checkbooks to you as the new international partner. So that is a tripwire, because again, that can define whether you fail or win. And again, it is a tick. Let's face it, in this very LinkedIn driven world where everything is public, and you anything from the outside where you have all of a sudden gone to a certain degree of a level of achievement at a company, and all of a sudden you're gone. people are going to ask questions. So, you know,
Right.
that's you just want to be careful of these things.
Cecilia says we might be smart to adopt a culture of curiosity, because if we are curious about one another and the situation, and then we can extrapolate and to move from X to Y. Well, curiosity is not only a danger for the cat, as the proverb says, is actually it's really good to have that. I would agree with you, Cecilia, because with curiosity comes a degree of humility. And this is something that we've said before in this program, that if you approach a new situation, an unfamiliar, unknown situation, with genuine curiosity that comes without the hint of judgment, if you're really genuine about wanting to know what's going on, then that will open a lot of minds, a lot of hearts, a lot of doors. So I tend to agree with Cecilia. Thanks for that comment.
Yeah, I actually think it's the core of everything that people need to do at the very start. Any global leadership program, I think in leadership program in general, I'm sure that if it doesn't possess some kind of component of developing a culture of curiosity in yourself and understanding, it probably isn't worth its salt. I mean, because that just doesn't, that kind of leaves one of the legs off the stool, and you are not going to be able to sit on it. So that's a very, very important point. But however, yes, that's true. And if you're relying on that same level of curiosity to be embedded already in either the people that you're going to be working with and managing, or interacting with in another culture, then perhaps you are kind of hoping for a little bit too much, and you need to identify and just dig into a little bit. How much are they willing to be curious about you? This is a big tripwire, because they will that will throw up along the way not just one big barrier, but many, many little barriers that you will kind of trip over. And as you're busily kind of going about your day and work and interactions with people, they're not in your purview, but all of a sudden you're on your face and on the ground, and that or you've hit the kangaroo. Let's go back to that.
And I think another potential obstacle could be those of you, and that includes myself, and maybe to a certain degree also Brett, but I can't speak for him. Those of us who've been around the block once or twice, right? Those of us who have learned a few things in our global lives, and sometimes we get complacent. Maybe I catch myself. I'm not immune to that. And then you might not even be in a role outside of your native culture. You might be in your very much comfort zone, known zone, and simply be reminded of your past experience. Oh, I've been there, I've worked there, I've spent months and months in that location. We've successfully navigated those obstacles. So, hey, here's my track record of international work. So I got this. Ergo, I enter this new situation that requires me to be curious, flexible, even vulnerable, and humble. I can approach this with lots of experience, because let's face it, I've been a global professional for many, many years. I got this. And then you don't.
Yeah.
And then you recognize, wait a second, the world hasn't stopped evolving. There are new people entering your world, your work world, with different worldviews, with different approaches to work. Maybe your subject matter expertise has become a little bit rusty. Maybe there's new technologies that you're grappling with. I've met many boomers who've been around the world for many, many years, now are struggling with the world of digital communication. Sure, you guys are globally competent in your way back when you were still flying business class around the globe, but today is not that era any longer, and you're needing to adapt to a new form of communication, a new form of interacting with your global peers. So your experience may have helped you get where you're now. It doesn't make you immune to new tripwires and obstacles that you will encounter along the way.
Yeah, that's a great point, because some of the cultures that we've worked with, even in the past 10, because it's a, this world is moving fast. It's a connected world. Part of that connection gives exposure to cultures that didn't have this 10, 15 years ago. It's a fairly short window of time. So we're seeing some of these young professionals come out of these countries with already maybe a particular level of foreign education, but also foreign awareness. And it has fundamentally changed their style. We can, this is why we kind of retest the boundaries of the Hofstadter dimensions and all these kind of things, because that was great, and it is still very, very relevant in many, many cases for today's world. But just assuming that that dynamic still exists in a place, say for China, for example, where you've got younger professionals now that are a little bit more aspirational, they're a little bit more comfortable with risk, their level of comfort with ambiguity, and just that sheer drive to individually succeed on the world stage is kind of different now than it was 10 years ago, when I was visiting there. And it's it is just, you can see it in the conversations, you can see it in the questions they ask. What are they trying to achieve? They're trying to emulate either people that they've used as mentors, and it might be and vice versa. Western leaders going to China now that are having to retest their assumptions about that country, and because they're different in the world as well. So I think these are not being able to retest your assumptions is another big thing. Kind of relates to curiosity, but it is a curiosity of self again. Yeah.
And we talked about time and the progression thereof, and how these dynamics may change over time. Yes, that's one aspect. I would also argue that directionality is another aspect. So I'm currently talking to a company from Central Europe who has operations around the world, and we're talking to their North American division. And they brought in a specialist who's been around the world. So he's been on these assignments, and he had been to Romania, to Russia, and to Saudi Arabia. So this was his work experience. You would say, awesome. So that's not his first rodeo. So he knows about the process of cultural adjustment. Now he's been transitioning, or he's coming to the southern United States, and he thought he's got this, and he doesn't. And the company is recognizing it, and they're wondering, that they're calling, say, hey, what's going on? We thought this would be the best candidate, and now he's showing these signs of not being as functional as we thought he would be. And that's what I mean by directionality. So he had spent his global career in cultures that tend towards a certain direction in terms of behavior. I'm not saying that Russia, Romania, and the Saudi kingdom are similar cultures, but they have a certain direction when it comes to hierarchy and communication styles, and how organizations structure themselves. So now in the US, that's the exact opposite what he has experienced before, and he doesn't get that yet. So even though you may have had experience abroad, that extra new experience may be so different from anything else you've done before that it will trip you up, right?
Yep, absolutely. So we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to hear what your experience has been in having accidentally been tripped up, or I would think there's a case for intentionally being tripped up, wouldn't you? I mean, this is if you're comfortable with it.
You tripped me up with this. I mean, I guess that was intentional.
180. I think this is funny. I encourage anybody to go and look up. You'll probably be able to find it on YouTube. But it's interesting that this is a sport. Let's talk about it as a sport, built in the pub culture of places like the UK and Ireland, and it certainly was in Australia. But this is interesting, because when I show that, people go, darts. It's like I see that board on the wall, or maybe somebody's got one at home, right? It's a good little thing. But man, if you ever watched a dart tournament, these people are key raising. it is a crowd of people, usually well kind of lubricated as far as the alcoholic level, and you've got really high level sportsmen. You know, I'm sorry, I'm making fun of them. I mean, these are very, very skilled people at what they do.
Hey, I'm not making fun of your cricket obsession either, so lay off a little bit.
No, it is just that, and then you have this announcer who kind of calls who can do math like a genius. You know, they've got to be able to do math very quickly as the guys are throwing, or the guys and girls are throwing the darts at the board. So they've got to quickly kind of add up the points. And I think the easiest one they're probably shouting this score of 180 because it's so easy. They don't have to do math. It's just 3 times triple 20, right? So it becomes 180.
I learned something new. And there is wire on that board that could trip you up. All right, we're staying within the metaphor. I'm loving it. Okay, good.
See how I tied that together? That's why you want your darts very sharp, right? This is to avoid those tripwires. You want your darts to be very, very sharp so that they don't hit that wire and bounce off, and you end up with your darts on the floor. So as a global professional, keep your darts in the board and not on the floor. That's our profound mic drop. See how we brought that back to the topic?
Man, very elegant, very elegant. I think you deserve a pint, even though it might be a bit too soon, but it's all right. It's 5 o'clock.
I have my cup of tea. You know, this is how we prepare for darts.
All right. Well, to all of you, this was a week, yet another week of Two Chaps Many Cultures. We wish you una feliz Semana Santa, a blessed Easter weekend, or the end of your Lent period for some of us, I hear.
Yes.
And is it still Passover, or is Passover finished? I should have looked it up. But there are many of the Mesopotamic or Abrahamic religions are going through the high holidays right now.
Yep.
So yes, and Cecilia says you tied it up very well. See, there tied it up well. All right.
So thank you, Cecilia. Thank you very much.
We wish you a blessed weekend. We'll see you again next week with even better metaphors. Better
Absolutely. I have to get to work to beat that one. Well, it's not a high bar.
Tune in again next week to watch Brett tie it up.
It's not a high bar. I've set the bar pretty low intentionally. Thanks, guys. Have a great weekend. Happy Easter, and we'll see you next week. Bye now.
Bye-bye.